Uh, I've already screwed up. I was supposed to get stuff ready. Um, crap, gribbity crap. I started without thinking. Sorry. I'm trying to set this up real quick. Okay. Alright. Just knocking it out. So we're doing this real quick because I gotta make this video, and if this video gets done while I'm streaming, it saves me so much time. So I was supposed to do a Dokkan battle video, but one is gonna have to be broken into parts. Basically, I'm gonna be making my idea of what the next year could be. I'm straight up, it's like Fantasyland, but basically it's gonna be like this quarter of the year, this quarter of the year, this quarter of the year, plus some, and then we'll do the anniversary, which that one's like bam, 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 bam. But anyways, so while I'm finishing on the script and what I'm gonna do with that one, I decided while Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 is here, I might as well talk about it, chit chat about it, and then people on Twitch will move on to whatever Nick wants to play. He hasn't said anything to me yet. I think it's gonna be It Takes Two because we haven't done it in a minute. But anyways, real quick before we get into the video, this is my main channel. We're almost at 650. At least by the end of March, I'm hoping for 700. The end of this year is hopefully 1,000. We're doing Hogwarts Legacy, Dead Space, the Super Saiyan 4 challenges. We did Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. I need to edit these down so it's a lot easier to enjoy. We did the 11th anniversary summons, and then for Fridays, unless we do something special, we'll be doing Five Nights at Freddy's Worlds Refreshed. Dead Space will be replaced by Resident Evil 6. That way we can be ready for... I want to buy Zero before I go into Requiem. Then I want Hogwarts Legacy to go into Jedi Survivor. And then Dokkan Battle, once the Super Saiyan 4 challenges are done, we'll go on to Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Moving on to SP Studios. This is my secondary channel, my passion channel. We do Yu-Gi-Oh! Summons, summary videos, news videos, topics like this. Donkey Kong Country Returns, Sonic Adventure 2, those are nostalgia games. This Friday we are doing Poke Park, Pikachu's Adventure, in place of Sonic Adventure 2. I'm trying to continue Donkey Kong Country Returns, but this last video on Wednesday, disgusting how bad it got. I'm on a level where it's just like you miss one thing, it ruins the run, and you have to redo the entire level. And I'm a collector of the letters, the KONG. But anyways, we're at 60. We might be able to do streaming here soon. I did post today. I was able to post my rewritten Chat Noir design. I like it a lot. Like it. Moving on to Bolt Jams. This is basically the VOD channel for Bolt Live. Bolt Live is the Twitch. People on SP Studios, it'll be in the description below. But basically what I do here is the first ever time I play something, I get it a video over here. But if it's anything that's story based that can be turned into a playlist, like It Takes Two, A Way Out, or Hollow Knight, it will be a continuous series. So anyways, let's get into this topic. Now that I've calmed down from the bullcrap that is Sonic Adventure 2, Donkey Kong Country Returns, and that chapter 5, I think straight up, I think I've been more. This has been more painful to play than chapter 4. Chapter 4 mostly was bugs, and then of course the thing that really got me frustrated was the big thing, which is the grab pack. Um, so real quick, um, let's just dive into chapter 5. Deep dive into it. It did amazing so far by bringing back the iconic part of Poppy Playtime, which is Huggy Wuggy. Then you jump into a chase sequence. That way you're just like hitting it. I know people like Mark have complained about the constant amount of running you gotta do. I think it's good for what you're dealing with. You are dealing with Huggy, who is the most aggressive toy we've ran into at this point. Which, while yes, it is annoying to deal with so many runs, I'm going to get into what could have changed for that, but for the most part, I think that is okay for what it was. The only thing I will say was the tea party scene was the start of the chapter for me, because that is where things actually were acknowledged. Like, apart from like Huggy's like aggressiveness, the introduction of what the prototype looks like is the only good part, and where it starts to be okay-ish for me in this chapter, because the prototype just jumping in, being this ominous figure. The only thing I didn't like was it's too common to see a jester at this point. They really should have done something different. We just got Jackie from Secret of the Mimic. I know they were probably like working side by side and probably didn't really overlap all that. Like, they were probably overlapped and really didn't be like take from one another. But Jesus, man, I've had it with the clowns, the jesters, and all that. There's so many other toys you could have done stuff based on. But I think after that, what really kills me is really it's the amount of times you have to change hands in the middle of high like stress moments. Not to mention the crouching. I'm okay if I was a controller play. Like, if the controller worked, I probably would have been happier with the crouch. But it forced me because it was a little wonky with the controller. I personally hate doing control. Luckily, I was able to key bind it to tab. Well, actually, no, I had to key bind it to caps locks because the tab was the inventory. And for the most part, it was okay, but the amount of times I had to crouch in the middle of a chase scene was ridiculous. Again, that'll be later as a point. So yeah, it's just like, except for Huggy's aggressiveness, it felt like a nothing burger. A lot of the characters were like, cool idea, didn't care for them. The hair person, cool idea. They were a drop in the ocean of the amount of toys we've seen at this point. And then it's just kind of like we get into this very end point. And I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to do a Infinity War Endgame style, where this is the depressing episode. Next episode is the hopeful end. But you have 5 chapters to figure that out. This is just ridiculous. And we'll get into another thing. There will be chapters, by the way, to make this a lot more digestible for people. I'm sorry that I'm mentioning this now in 10 minutes. If you were just like a podcast listener and just throw it on and threw it down. But yeah, there'll be chapters. But aside from that, the thing that, like, it was the last 2 chases with Lily Love Braids, and the prototype. That's how bad of a character. I couldn't even barely remember her name. I'm watching people's playthroughs now. That's why it's still new in my brain. Um, I just watched Mark's finally because I'm seeing everyone react to that. Like, holy crap! Someone has an opinion. That's correct. Um, this is those two chase scenes kills this game for me because it's like normally I liked what they did before where it's just like they highlighted stuff to be like, hey, this is where you grab, this is where you're supposed to go. But in the middle of chases, you shouldn't be grabbing at too much. And the amount of stuff just to try to get away from her. And I hated the beginning of the Lily run after they introduced the prototype because it's just like, okay, you're following Kissy, and then they just kill you. Like half the time, you won't notice that. I think she blocks you. Like her hair extends, she kills you. That is not good. You should have like, as you're going up the stairs, have her go through that door. But no, as you're approaching the middle section of that door is when you pop her out. That way, it's a high chance for the person to die. No, I agree with Mark that you should not be structuring a chase scene where there's a high chance for your players to die. It ruins the experience. They're supposed to vibe, feel stressed, feel scared. But like every single time they've done a chase scene at this point, it's like, oh no, new thing, or like, hey, we tripped you up again. No, it's cool to do it once to like divert expectations, but you should not be doing this every single time a chase happens. Um, Another thing is they just overly did the collapsing obstacles. Every time you go through a path, obstacle crashes. You gotta either go and squeeze sideways or go under. Overused. Doesn't need to happen every single time. And not to mention it slows down the chasing and like it pisses people off. Like, because most of the time in the early, like when you're your first, second time running, you're not expecting that to happen. So you're just going, but you get caught up by that, and you're like you have to like switch your brain to crouch and all that. You'll have a high chance at dying because either in that moment you're not fast enough to crouch, or it's just it lets the enemy catch up fast enough behind you to get killed. Um, Another thing with the prototype thing is the hand changing. Actually, it's just the grab pack altogether. The grab pack is the biggest issue with the Playtime games. I know it's a good aesthetic and it's a good different mechanic, but Jesus, please save us from this one mechanic because that is disgusting. Like, they shortened the range. They like I know they were supposed to make it easier to like it's more precise. It still did not feel that precise for me. The hair in the middle does not mean nothing because it's the middle of the player's POV, not where you're shooting your hand. Um, so it should be a dot rather than a target. Um, or I can't remember. That's how forgettable this thing is. But I know that middle of the screen does not mean what your hands are doing. Because they're like off by a little bit, which for the most part, once you do it in the early games, it's fine because now you know it's going to be a little bit off. But like I missed so many times, and that's what got me killed a lot. And then it's kind of just like the Mark also said this, and I agree massively with this, is just the time it takes, one, to change the hands, and two, for the hand to do its thing. It takes forever. These things are supposed to be like, boom. No, it's just like, all right, we're going to get there. All right, do your thing. It should, like, you can use your grab pack, but it cannot be used in the scenes like that. But yeah, that ruined it for me. And I think the biggest issue with character-wise is Giblet. Waste of a character. And I'll get into it at the very end. But going on to the next part, which is just like, I've went back and watched my gameplays of the other chapters. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, I watched everybody else play. So I already knew basically what to do. So it was a lot easier for me to do it. And that was like what I used to do, was I watched something, really wanted to play it, did it for my own channel. But now I'm kind of like, hey, I'm going to do it on my own. I might cheat every now and again to kind of see what to do there, just to kind of make it easier for me so I'm not getting angry. Because while, yes, it takes away from my ability to do so, but if I want to enjoy something, I should not be restricted to not go get help. But yeah, Chapter 1, for the most part, was okay. I was okay with like the one time that they shut the door and you're like scared that you don't know what you're doing. Huggy's on his way down. That's one of the first times that it shows that the player does not know what to do in this opportunity. They don't expect for the door to lift. They're trying to run around and find something to do, so they're probably gonna miss that the door opens a few times before finally realizing that. And not to mention, like, the corridors are also very bad. Like, it gives you time to change up and shift, but that door scene was the worst part of that first chapter. And then just, like, a thing that I kind of got annoyed by now that I look back at it is it kind of feels like it slows the character down at the very end of the chase so that you feel the idea of Huggy on your neck, which is not needed. The fact that he's like winding around a bunch of stuff, blocking you off, you're getting blocked by a door, you don't need to slow the player down. It like, I felt it both watching and playing it. Chapter 2, for the most part, was aside from the grab pack, because they started relying heavily on the grab pack in that chapter. I think everything was fine up into the Whack-A-Wuggies. Whack-A-Wuggies, it was too dark. The grab pack is too slow to deal with that amount of enemies. Yeah, well, yes, you can do it. It just doesn't feel like a decent game to play. And then, let's see. And then, like, Pugapillar was the darkness. The darkness is what really got me. The darkness, the grab pack, and the Whack-A-Wuggies, with the speed of things, those combinations kind of ruined the end of the game for me, because I felt joy all the way from chapter 1, aside from like the ending where I like started noticing what they're doing with the runs. Chapter 2, it was fun until I got to the Whack-A-Wuggies, where I just died because it was so hard to like rotate and find them. And then Pugapillar, just like, I got turned around a lot in the tunnels, and that kind of ruined that kind of mini game for me. Mommy's chase scenes / boss fight is okay for the most part. A few things that I would say that were not okay. I mean, if you put in like a poster, like, hey, look up, that might help with it. But like, there's those, like, the first time when she comes back to get you, you have to like look up and grab something. Unless you're like literally looking around the room, you're not gonna know where that is. But aside from that, I think the biggest issue is the grab pack in the darkness from chapter 2. Chapter 3 was amazing. I think this is where they started getting annoying with the changing of the hands, though. Even when it was just platforming, it sucked, because you're like, okay, la la, la la. But because there's no enemies, it was okay-ish. I think they did try to do it during the Dog Day chase, the change of the hands, if I can remember properly. But I think for the most part, that one was okay. I think Catnap was okay of a boss fight. Um, for the most part, his chase was okay. Uh, I think the school teacher was the worst part of that. I'm trying to remember if there was anything else. Um, oh, the objectives. I think chapter 3 was the start of like the objectives are very hard to kind of be like, okay, where now? Because I felt kind of like I started getting slightly lost at that time. But they still kind of were pretty forward with it. Chapter 4, bugs, glitches, the return of like you needed to use the grab pack to go into the stuff, like the swinging, ridiculous. Um, and then I think just like those characters were wasted. I was really happy with the characters, just they got wasted. Trying to think of other ones. The Doctor was a pretty cool villain. The idea of what he does. Um, the instant kill one was kind of dumb. The fact that you switch up and introduce a angelic death robot was kind of dumb. Um, but I think for the most part that was okay. Um, and then chapter 5, like I said, I've already been over it. Moving on to like, what would I say? How I would structure it is the last thing I want to do. Um, Major issues of this series together is just like the darkness when you don't have flashlights or the flare gun. The like it's supposed to be a scary game, and only 3 and some of 5 actually made you feel that. I mean, Mommy's fight was okay, and the chase scene from 1 was okay. The grab pack is just broken. I think chapter 5 did some good things, but I think they really should have gotten rid of it by then. So yeah, so I went through all the chapters. The lore. The lore is one thing I will say. For the major stuff, like all the heads of the departments, that stuff needs to be some of the easiest stuff to get. That way people can be invested in what's happening here. Lore is why a lot of people play these games, and to have some of the major stuff be so hard to get, or like so like in the middle of a chase scene or something like that, that stuff needs to quit. Like, if it's like, hey, you want to know more about this character, you need to go into this corner of the level, that's fine. But like, I really want to like catch up with Rich every single time I go into a game, and usually he's one of the easiest ones to do. I don't know if there's one in chapter 5. I know they talked about him. But yeah, that's one thing I will say about the lore. Um, just to kind of like jokingly talk about chapter 5, what chapter 6 should be. It's just like we need every single person to turn against the prototype. I need Barry to come down, barrel, smash into the prototype, save me, get me away from Poppy because her butt needs to stay away from me as well. Heck, crack Poppy's head as you're running away, Barry. And then, like, actually do something with these characters that were, like, half-assed. And, like, do something good with them. But I don't know what else to really say about this. Like, the lore feels so convoluted at this point. Not to mention a lot of the points, they give extra little details to stuff we already know. And it's like, I don't need another it's like Fazbear Entertainment. I already know Fazbear Entertainment. I know Poppy Playtime, hand in hand, are crappy, like, companies. I don't need to know what they're doing with employee X. I don't need to know that they're crappy in this situation. I already know that. But, like, I need to know what is this person's motivation to do such. Why is Leaf P... Like, Elson making a bunch of money which by the way, I think they were in a money hole, so I don't know why the heck they would even do it in the first place. But like, there was no reason that like half of these people are doing what they're doing except for evilness. Just, well, I'm just evil. I was born this way. You can't tell me otherwise. You can't do that. I need to understand them more. I need more time with these characters that are the reasoning for this environment. It is nice to kind of figure out who the kid was behind this toy and X. But the thing is, now that Chapter 5 is went and gone, it basically makes it sound like, yes, the kids kind of remember what happened, but it sounds like for the most part, like, their previous life is just gone. Because like a lot of the ones that fought for their stuff, we seen in one of Huggy's memories, if you didn't go along with it, you're dead. You go into the grinder. So it's kind of just like, why, like, it's cool to figure out who it is in like a letter and like quickly understand, or like, why does this person have to do it with a major plot point? But like, I don't need to figure out what this person's fucking dinner routine was at this point. And then like with the Dr. Atkins in this chapter 5, I understand she kind of shows what's happening with the scientist of Playtime Co. But I am so tired of so many of these scientists having that motivation for innovation. None of these people that had to do with these major things seem to have a good head on their shoulders. Like, we seen one in the VHS series, but like, where's the good people in this? Not to mention, it's kind of like, why did we go to orphans? Can't we just take a freaking, not a good idea, but like a homeless man off the corner? No one's gonna matter. Not to mention, that's less evil in my mind than a poor child who doesn't have a mom and dad and is already suffering in their life. Yes, let them have a home, let them have fun. Why are you deciding to make them the fun for others? Makes no sense. That's torture. Like, hey, yeah, your life already sucks, and you're only, you basically started life on impossible mode. Let me make it to where you died, and there is no restart for you. That is stupid. But going on to like how I would structure this series is like, I think chapter 1 is generally fine. It is the factory floor. This is where the environment starts. This is how you start to kind of understand why a lot of people loved this company. You get introduced to probably one of the most iconic mascots of their company. And him being, like, as we learned, he was one of the most, like, he had some issues during, like, VHS series and all that, but he was the one who listened the most in terms of the bigger bodies. So him being one of the only ones to be in that kind of floor on a daily basis and kind of be the security is understandable. Chapter 2, I think really you should have actually put Chapter 3 and 2 need a flip-flop. Because Chapter 3, I think, is perfect. This is where all the bodies end up, because that's where a lot of the bodies are going to be. This is where a lot of the workers, they're not going to carry the workers 3 or 4 floors down. They're just going to go, okay, get them out of sight, get them out of mind. That way no one can immediately get to them. If someone starts, like, poking around, we can deal with them after a floor. But, like, it's also kind of like, a thing that I think is a bad part of the lore is, like, so we're not supposed to show the bigger bodies initiative characters, except for Huggy, who's just a statue to others, but we're acting like Mommy Longlegs isn't there, and this is supposed to also be an operation that people aren't going to question the game station. I feel like the game station should have been secret for the most part. Like if it's someone who's like having to investigate the areas, you can show off that in a general sense and have a reason to show it. But like for people like who are just there for the orphans, they only have to go down one versus three, and they gotta kind of question why is the kids going through testing cycles for fun. Um, so it's just like I feel like chapter one, factory floor. This is what everyone sees. Chapter two, you go into this is a new company. This is what the company was going for to kind of show their love of kids. Um, I think they should move the teacher down. We'll get to her, but the what are they called? Catnap, Dog Day, and all that. They are fine to stay there because they were like the friendlies of this era of them, and that is completely understandable. And I think that those characters, they are basically the aside from Huggy, I think they've become more of a face for Poppy Playtime, just because they're kind of like those colorful, like there's so distinct characteristics of them. Um, and I love the animated cartoons they have them on YouTube. Um, and not to mention, it also kind of like is more understandable. Um, you instead of having Poppy immediately kidnapped, um, she kind of like is operating, walking around. We meet up with Kissy Missy and all that. Um, that way you can kind of see that there are connections here with Poppy, um, but it's kind of like because you're getting introduced, you actually can trust her, unlike just a random person you just met that's a doll, and you're just trusting to get in train and hope that you get out of there. That makes no sense. But like you're going in for your coworkers. You see the bodies. Oh crap, my coworkers are definitely dead. And then now you hear that kids are a part of this. Go. You're gonna go. But definitely keep the smiling friends. That's what they are. The smiling friends, keep them there, um, and kind of like make them the main focus. I'm trying to remember, aside from the teacher, who is the other one? I think there's one more. There was like the playground with all the other critters. There's the counselor's office, which I think where Catnap presided. And then there was the mansion. So yeah, I think if they take away the teacher, everything else should be fine in that chapter. Chapter 1 should be kind of like the testing grounds. Chapter 2 should be the horror chapter, the vibe chapter. But like, you should run and kind of test the grabbing stuff in those platformings. That way, by chapter 3, when we go to the PlayStation, you can actually fix what you have to do, because a big thing is like, you want me to swing, you need to do what you did in chapter 5 and give me an extra bar to pull me forward, because me hoping that my motion is going to end up where I want it to. Trying to think of what else. It's just like, so like giving me that extra bar to move around better by chapter 3 would have been amazing. That way you can be like, okay, this is the chapter to test out the mechanics of the arms, but it's also like, we already seen a little bit of what happened in chapter 2. We can fix it early on, and here's our idea. What do you think? And straight up, no one's gonna like it, so you're gonna have to make it easier on people. But at least it was better than what it would have been was in chapter 2. So in this chapter 3 of the PlayStation, I think definitely keeping most of it, because the minigame idea is pretty good there. But I think you should upgrade the pack here. I think keeping the pack and kind of going into chapter 2 with very little. I think getting the flare gun would be good, but I think the rest of them need to be left out. So I think the only ones you really needed were the green hand and the flare gun hand. But I think by chapter 3, we basically are just kind of like sticking with what we have, and our normal functions will be our main go about things. Yeah, flare gun is nice to kind of see things, and having the flare gun would make it easier to do the wacka-wuggy section, and have a better reasoning than do, and make it easier to see them too. Um, so you drop one flare, bam, 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 in one section, drop another. That would have been so much funner. But then I think after that, definitely chapter 4. I think chapter 4, take the characters we just introduced with chapter 5, like Giblet. I think introducing him as a part of the resistance against the prototype, and then already having this you thought you could trust Poppy thanks to chapter 2 and most of chapter 3, but she's kidnapped and you're able to get her in, but she says, all right, even though I know you're trying to run away, we really need you, and you kind of gotten this far away, so we're just going to let you, force you to go. You're too valued to be released after 2 other chapters that I known you. It just feels better that way. And then just definitely get rid of a lot of the moving around. This chapter really should also include the teacher. This is kind of like the institution of it. I mean, actually, no. Let's hold off on the teacher. Or, wait, should we? Actually, what you should have done, because I do want chapter 5 to be the very end, I think having the resistance, having Giblet, having, instead of, because the bodies are already in chapter 2, this basically be kind of like, there is no going here. The only, things that are here are either Farrell, the doctor, or what's left of the resistance. And kind of this is also the teacher is here, and this is kind of also where I think the chapter 5 hypnosis kind of thing should have been. And I think really here is where you would reintroduce Huggy 2. That way you fill in a lot of the nothing sections of chapter 4. Kind of like you're trusting of a toy group. You're dealing with hostile forces of the doctor. You're seeing bits and pieces of the prototype. You're seeing the teacher, and she's kind of pushing you out of the sections you're supposed to be in. And then the nightmare critters, that right there feels like a good thing where this is the training zone. This is where a lot of the clashing forces are. Another thing I would really like is kind of Giblet can return in chapter 5, but I think showing us that him being a part of the resistance, but the prototype sees him as someone to actually keep around, and making him an inside out, an outside, one of the basically I think chapter 5 was kind of showing anyone who goes against the prototype, he re-experiments on them by taking their inside, their pelts, and reversing them, because in the design for what Giblet was, it looks like Gizmo from the Gremlins, but it looks like his little tuft of hair on top, it looks like his pelt is on the outside while his fur is on the inside. I think showing after chapter 4 him being hurt because of him going against him is understandable, and him being one of the only living characters makes more sense. And I think instead of Dowie getting upset with us, I think him still acting out based on his other personalities, getting him killed was still a good idea, but I think definitely him, I think the doctor should have been a part of that. Him, being the reason why the safe haven gets killed, and him acting out against the doctor, and basically what remains are like Kissy and Poppy are trying to stop him. Um, but he gets killed by the doctor because he's getting into the hive. We're able to kill the doctor, but it's only like a, we have no more safe haven. Giblet's been taken and tortured. Dowie is dead. And then I think when all of this is happening, we finally get to see. I think this is where you should have brought in the Love Braid character, because you're dropped into basically the rejects area. Basically, you're teasing that the next chapter of chapter 5 being this rejects where everything's forgotten. Starting the chapter with like she's there, she's got you captive, she thinks you're just playthings to her. You have Kissy all messed up, you have Poppy. I think the prototype coming in and revealing him, and basically we see him, and basically everyone's walking away damaged, and then into chapter 5, that it just feels better. We're just like, okay, we're going in to save our people in chapter 1. Most things stay the same, but by chapter 2 you're dealing with play care. You're seeing what everybody else, like the public, sees. This is where the end of the public will see. But this is where a lot of the public and the employees are dead. This is kind of like you feel the vibe of what this game's deep lore is in chapter 2. Seeing the smiling critters, dealing with just like this is the push away force of anyone who decides to like break in and entering. Um, and then kind of having chapter 3 where it's just like, okay, you're deep in, you're running into like, okay, your coworkers are dead, but now there's kids on the line. Um, but you're starting to deal with more and more of the prototypes people. Where I think it's still okay to have the prototypes arms, because I don't think flipping those scenes means anything. All you're doing is seeing more of the arm earlier. But I think it's perfect still. Like I said, the only thing is taking the teacher from 3 that's now 2 and putting him in 4, and then 4 basically being hopeless. Like you're on a killing streak, but now you're dealing with you're in the hive. You got aggression everywhere. You're dealing with the doctor. You're dealing with the teacher. You're dealing with Huggy returning. You're dealing with so much, um, and then just like all these like remaining toys die. Dowie emotionally gets killed. Um, you think you're gonna win because you finally beat the doctor to avenge Dowie, but then like whoever remains is just taken down by a still off-screen prototype, and then you're captured by the beginning of the reject to tease it, um, because really she's not worth of a character. Even though it seems like the prototype was scared of her, she'd kill off too easily, and he really didn't give a crap when he was confronting Poppy there. So I think just having her in a small scene to kind of just like tease what the next chapter is going to be, where they're like crazy, no one cares about them, and then kind of just like showing the prototype and just like crushing defeat, like him being in person and doing the Ollie voice would be so much more like, I mean, a lot of people saw it coming, but like doing it in person to your face would feel so much worse. Um, and then I think killing Kissy and then letting Huggy show up in chapter 5 to help you would be more beneficial for a story. Um, but it's just like feeling that Thanos crushing and should be set there. And then um, for chapter 5, it's all the rejects. I think they threw away the rejected toys with Rich way too quickly. I think this is where you show the Brawn, you show Daisy, you show a lot of the characters that weren't meant to have like decent sized characters. These are the characters that just weren't useful to the prototype, but like he said he would protect them, but not protect them enough to like feed them enough, but just enough to keep them alive, you know. Keep them aligned by providing what little that they need. Um, I think that's basically what this next would. It just be like, this is the depressing. The toys are only doing it out of need. They are not there to go against you just out of spite. They're just like, man, I don't want to miss another meal. Is basically what these toys in Chapter 5 would feel like. Um, Having just like no hope whatsoever. You basically have nobody to come up to. You finally meet Giblet, and he even just like, yes, you got somebody back, but like, jeez, if you get caught, it can be so much worse than dying. Um, and then I think, yes, bringing in Chum to kind of be like, this is one of the rejects that the prototype still uses to kind of be like an errand boy, to be worth of something. Um, Him coming in, and I just like that last little bit of a push um, with what little bits, and I think finally like showing what they're trying to do to end the suffering of the toys, and just kind of showing basically to everyone at that point, like once they start like, because stories passed along from floor to floor through the actual games, I think by this point, just like at first they're against you just to get a meal, but once they start noticing that the prototype is so like, you do anything even to slightly inconvenience me, I'll end you. I think eventually all the toys should be the ones to defeat the prototype, and then that be it. Just because another thing I think Chapter 5 did wrong in their sense is just like, uh, you are waiting to see the combination of these monsters that he's been collecting. Mommy stretching, Catnap's gas, the strength of both of Huggy and Kissy. You don't see none of that. You can see the gas, but it really doesn't do anything. I think it's just kind of like make him fear him more, or like put people at ease or something. But like, I think having all these rejects, having this extremely strong person just come out, wail on you, and the only reason he gets defeated is because the army that he decided to mistreat finally goes against him. And I think Poppy's original idea of a sacrifice would be what should happen. That way, just like all those souls can finally get put to rest. And then of course you gotta say, what about a Chapter 6? Well, technically they've mentioned other locations and other things. There's more than just one. We're doing the sister location situation. I think that's how you really should do anything past Chapter 5. So, but that's my take on things. That's my 2 cents. I might do a summary video on lore. I don't think it's worth doing anything until Chapter 6 though. So that might be a year before we get into it. I'll think about it by next week. But definitely we're gonna get next Thursday will be Dokkan Battle. My ideas for what the year could look like, even though it's gonna look like so crap based on what we just got for the 12th. But anyways, I'll see you guys on YouTube in the next one. Bye bye.